I am just now realizing I have not yet made my banner review for version 6.6. The units are Nicole and Lohen, obviously, with Durin and Mavuika rerunning. Hello there, Flip here, and today we're going to be going over the version 6.6 banners, or Luna 7, discussing their value and if it's worth pulling for them, and then of course closing out the video by going over each of the characters' vertical investment paths, and which you should be prioritizing if at all. But before we do that, as always, if at any points during the video you were entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin's meta, and I'll try to keep you updated. Shout out to my lovely channel members, I really appreciate your support. I hope you guys have amazing luck on your pulls. And also, since the version 6.6 banners are around the corner, if you want to spend more smartly, then I would like to announce a sponsor for today's video, EnjoyGM. EnjoyGM is a very safe and secure top-up site that provides discounts for all your favorite gacha games, while also keeping the same benefits you get in-game, like the first-time double top-up bonuses, and the only things you need to do is enter your UID and region, as you can see I'm doing here, and there's the luck and moon I got. This site offers great benefits as new users will receive an 8% off coupon for signing up, and for popular gacha titles, your first purchase comes with a dedicated 8 to 20% off coupon. Then after your first purchase is completed, you'll become a member and unlock exclusive pricing. So to save the most, make sure to use my exclusive link down below, get your game-specific first purchase bonus, which unlocks the discounted prices, and then apply your site-wide 8% off coupon. And if you need any further help or have questions, they have 24/7 human customer support. So click my link down below if you want to start saving. Thank you to EnjoyGM for sponsoring the video, and now back to it. Do I want to talk about Nicole or Lohen first? Let's just do Nicole. Nicole is going to be a premier support option, with the focal point of her kit being her team-wide attack buffing that is slightly weaker to Bennett's in power, but buffs the whole team, which is a big benefit for sub DPSs. And she does this on top of having an extremely strong shield, and with her burst giving coordinated attacks that actually do pretty decent damage, which is even further enhanced when she's with a Hexrite character. There's also a new artifact set releasing in this version, where if you have 2 Hexrite characters on your team, the corresponding element of the character equipping the set and the on-field character will gain a 40% damage bonus. So putting all of this together, Nicole is going to be a very strong buffer that doesn't depend on energy for her buff, while having a strong form of sustain from her shield, while also not requiring you to stay in a circle. But when trying to evaluate how strong Nicole is, there are quite a few oddities. For one, a lot of her value is tied to her artifact set, and to a lesser extent her burst, which is buffed by her Hexrite passive. So for her teams, you ideally are going to want to have 2 Hexrite units, with her best pairing being alongside Durin, who is also getting benefits from Nicole, like the fact that his damage will finally be buffed, since Nicole is a team-wide buffer. This leads to a lot of cases where if you want Nicole to feel good, you either want to be running her with any of the Hexrite DPSs, or you just use Durin, otherwise she isn't really doing a whole lot. But another very interesting thing that happens with this, which I'd like to call the Shilinen paradox, is that a lot of Nicole's value does come from her artifact set, which requires 2 Hexrite characters to enable. If someone is a Hexrite DPS, or you're running something like a Chevreuse team that can use Fischl, Durin can just run the Hexrite set himself, and that already ends up being a super huge upgrade to where Nicole is generally only about a 5% increase over Durin in cases where Durin can use the new set. So if you already have Durin, yes, getting Nicole gives you one of the strongest duos in the game for a majority of the attack scalars, but is a 5% theoretical increase on most teams over just using a new set on Durin really going to be worth it for you? But that is discounting the fact that Nicole does have a quite strong shield, which isn't reflected in theory, and why, especially if you're someone like a Wanderer main, I think Nicole is probably the best thing you can do, as she's a strong attack buffer on top of being a shielder, which is something someone like Wanderer really needed. And I can't really go into that much detail for everywhere where Nicole is good. I'll maybe put up a tier list here if I'm bored enough, but essentially for every single attack scaler that cares about damage bonus, Nicole is going to be one of their best options. If you play any of the Hexrite DPS, Nicole is going to be a must pull for you. If you want to keep Emily relevant, because Nicole buffs attack from off field, Emily's actually getting a pretty good buff from Nicole, specifically things like Kinich teams, as well as reverse melt setups with Risley or Ganyu, and also just running pure burning monopyro teams that can be set up with someone like Linny or Yoimiya. Every Onimo DPS, including Chaska, does also benefit from Nicole. Shao, Wanderer, Varka, and Venti obviously run hyper carry teams, with Chaska being able to be used in melt setups. And then even the original Yuri pairing do benefit quite a bit from Nicole. Raiden is traditionally a character that wants sub DPS in her teams. Nicole aids you in buffing those sub DPSs, which is nice. And then Yai, like Emily, as an off-field DPS, and even when played on-field can be quite squishy, so Nicole is good for her as well. And this isn't even mentioning the fact that, like, unanimously, if you're getting Nicole to C2+, she is just the best attack buffing support in the game. I think the only real characters that she doesn't work with at C0 that are meta and people are using are Mavuika and Arlecchino, because Nicole has this weird 3-second restriction where you only get a portion of her attack buff, and Mavuika and Arlecchino are front-loaded, and also characters like Veressa, Chlorinde, and Navia, as they just have better options. But I guess in Navia's case, if you're someone who skipped Linnea and happen to have Durin, Nicole will be your next best bet. I'm just gonna stop talking, the tier list is right here. Nicole is a very, very good pickup for you if you have Durin or any of the Hexride DPSs, especially if you're going to vertically invest into her. Otherwise, you can very safely skip her, as Genshin released Nicole in a very odd time, to where attack scaling units no longer really dominate the meta, and even with some attack scalers they just have better options, and the Hexride requirement for her artifact sets full buffing does also limit some of her potential play. But I think it's really interesting how, despite being an attack buffer, Nicole doesn't work with the best attack scaling units like Mavuika and Skirk. Instead, she's bringing up the older, weaker units, and that seems to be what Hexride's been about. Now we can move on to my favorite of this beta and Lohen. I don't know if you guys have seen my video on him, but I really thought he was going to get nerfed, considering the fact that 1, he's a standard character, and we know how the last one went, and also Zajef likes him. But despite all odds, Lohen has only been getting buffed this beta, and I think he's someone people might actually want to look at. Lohen is an on-field cryo DPS, and I have already made a video covering him in detail, but to summarize, he promotes the use of off-field DPS to buff both him and himself, so he's more of a driver DPS, kind of like Raiden, but he does have good enough numbers to be a carry in his own right. Lohen's best team is going to be alongside Durin to enable Durin to forward melt his off-field hits, and leakers have told me this still works with solo cryo setups, and of course you can use dual cryo setups with Sitlali too. He's good as a reverse melt DPS, and on a freeze team with Mona, and since Lohen's most likely going to be a standard unit, which is information leakers have given us even before his beta, this means that you should be able to actually just get to Lohen for free during the anniversary update. So if Lohen is someone you want to main, you can prioritize getting other things like his supports or his weapon instead of having to save pulls for him directly, and then you can just wait to pick him up. So in my opinion, no one should really directly be pulling for Lohen unless you have pulls to spare, just because you will be able to get him for free, and his early constellations aren't that good. And in regards to how valuable Lohen is overall, a DPS is just a DPS. Lohen should be pretty good into both the cryo shield bosses we have right now, and if you're able to build one of his stronger teams, whether that's a Scoffia freeze or him as a forward melt driver, and it doesn't hurt your other teams, then he would be a pretty good pickup for you. Otherwise, if you have Skirk or another competent cryo DPS that is already good into those checks, then you probably won't need Lohen per se. But now looking at someone Lohen needs for a lot of his teams, we can now talk about Durin. Durin is a pyro off-field sub DPS, and the biggest things that are changing for him are all happening this update, where he's able to use a new artifact set in 2 Hexride teams, and is going to be his best in slot in 2 Hexride scenarios, where he's playing more of a supportive role. And also Nicole is going to be released. Very often in teams, Durin doesn't get buffed as he's an off-field unit. Nicole is going to help with that as her attack buff is strong and is off-field, so it affects him too, making his sub DPS more viable. So the Nicole Durin core is about to be one of the best duos for attack buffers in the game overall. Oh, and also Varka came out to who's the strongest Hexride DPS, and Durin of course works well for him. Now, the biggest thing I've seen people talk about is whether or not they should pull for Durin or Nicole, assuming they have neither right now, and it was kind of evil for Hoyoverse to run them at the same time. Ideally, try and get both. But if that's not possible for you, then it kind of does depend. For the Hexride DPSs who are getting her passive regardless, and characters like Gumming who weren't using her Hexride passive anyways, in that case just get Nicole and you'll be fine. And for Pyro DPSs you are playing in Chevreuse teams, where you are also using Fischl, in that case I would prioritize getting Nicole as well if that's what you want to do. But otherwise, in most teams where you care about Pyro application, and if you want a general Pyro support, Durin is pretty good even with that as Hexride passive. So for teams like like reverse melt teams, Chevreuse teams with an electro carry, I would prioritize Durin first. For Hexride DPSs or Pyro-led Chevreuse teams, I would prioritize Nicole. Basically, in teams where Pyro application is important, you should be using Durin. And when it's not, Nicole is generally better, on top of her having a very strong shield. I guess this is going to blend in when I talk about Mavuika, but honestly, I just don't think anyone actually needs a Hexride DPS at all if you already have a strong Pyro DPS. As we've seen with the Mushroom and the E-Key to Misor, unlike certain Lunar teams or Night Soul Shill, there isn't really anything special about being a Hexride character that makes you necessarily need one. Hell, I was able to beat the Mushroom with a weak Pharesa team on Dire, and Varka's C0R1 wasn't even that great into his boss on Dire either, even compared to Mavuika. So in that case, if Hexride units don't really seem to be that punishing regardless, I feel like with how Hoyoverse has been going, the new Stellar reactions are probably going to be horrible, in which there's a very good case for the meta, and if you want to consistently clear Fearless and Dire in the next few patches, that you ideally just skip Hexride as a whole and focus on the next big regional mechanic. And this is not me calling the Hexride characters bad to any degree, I'm just saying if it's something you already haven't invested into at this point, so you don't have a Durin or a Nicole or even a Varka, with Snezhnaya around the corner, it might be better to just save your pulls. That's enough about the Hexride units though. Take me back to my good old Natlin with Mavuika. Since her last rerun, nothing has really changed necessarily about her. Her Melt and Overload teams are still by far her best, and the units within these teams haven't really changed either. She has just received more options across the board, like you can play her in Lunar teams with Columbina and Anefa, and you can use Durin as an option in her Overload teams if you want. And I guess Nicole is a teammate for her, but she is just worse than Bennett unless you're getting Nicole C2. But at whale levels of investment, Nicole is going to be her best support. But yeah, Mavuika's teams have relatively stayed the same. On her last rerun, she was seen as the pinnacle of the game's DPS, but now with the Lunar teams, better Skirk combos, and even the Hexride units like Lohen and Varka being quite good, Mavuika is no longer the de facto best DPS in the game, as I would argue the Lunar carries are just better than her, with Columbina, and some other DPSs are just getting closer to her level of power. But honestly, I don't really think it matters. For one, you need 3 teams in Stygian, and if we just look at the results, Mavuika's Melt or Overload teams have very consistently been among the better clearing Stygian teams on neutral bosses, and even been able to just bypass some shield completely due to her raw damage output. This is of course because her damage at a baseline is so good, and you can get very good things like her signature weapon, Sitlali C2, and her own C2, which are all amazing investments, and quite early, to make her a more consistent performer. And also people have just been continuing to learn and improve on her combos, which are free damage increases provided that you can do them, that is able to improve your performance by ridiculous ranges. So all these things considered, as a DPS, Mavuika is still one of the better pickups, and is arguably the best DPS into neutral bosses, which is reason alone to still get her. But on top of this, she's also a pretty solid Pyro support. However, I did make a video covering this a while back, but I do just think Durin is better in her role as a Pyro support, and especially now that we're going to have Nicole. So I don't really think it's worth getting her just for this prospect anymore, but it is something she can do alongside being a good DPS. So I do think it adds to her value a bit. And she's also still technically the best in slot Pyro applicator for someone like Mualani, since Durin or Nicole aren't really doing a lot there. Now to get into my rankings, I think it's so subjective that I don't really know what to say. There are very good reasons for pulling Durin, Nicole, and Mavuika, and they all almost cover the same bosses, while providing very similar things to an account. So I just don't think there's anything helpful I can say to summarize. The only thing I can tell you is to not pull for Lohen, due to the fact that he's going to be free from the selector, so I don't think there's any real value in getting him on his debut banner. Now to get into vertical investment, let's start with Nicole. Like with most supports, her signature weapon is fine. It's 26% damage bonus to the active character, and 13% to any off-field Hexride DPSs, and it's in line with most other signature weapons being a 10% team-wide damage increase. It also helps her energy requirements and lets her reach the max cap on her buff, since the weapon is such an attack steroid, and if you are only pulling for one thing, it's technically the best investment to go towards. But in my opinion, Nicole's C1 is close enough to her signature weapon regardless. Her C1 just gives you additional projection attacks, by the way, but it also leads to Nicole's C2, which is one of the most broken supportive constellations in the game, giving an additional 300 attack to everyone including Nicole, while also shredding pyro resistances by 25% and the corresponding resistance of your DPS. This is ludicrous for any attack scaler in the game, and make Nicole just become the best support for all of them pretty much, besides like Skirk. So hey, if you're tired of pulling for wheelchairs and want your carry to actually do damage, this is one of the best vertical paths I would recommend. This is also the same case with Durin, which is also something I've calculated prior. His C1 and R1 are virtually the same increase, while his C1 leads to his C2, which is a 30% overall team DPS increase. So in both cases, it's just smarter to go down the Constellation route for these characters. Now for our DPSs, starting with Mavuika, I actually don't really think it matters that much which route you decide to go down with her. Her signature weapon is one of the best in the game, and it's technically cheaper to pull as well, over a C1. So I have changed my mind on this and think it should be the first upgrade you get before going into her Constellations. Her C1 just doesn't really do a whole lot when you should be playing Mavuika with Natlan characters anyways, so it just gives quality of life I don't really think is that useful, as well as being a very middling damage increase, on top of giving more power application to Mavuika, which can hurt some setups, as you won't be able to reapply Hydro or Cryo as easily for Verdescent or Scroll setups. But of course, Mavuika C2 is amazing for her as a DPS, being close to a 50% jump from C0. The only thing that's really changed about Mavuika's C2 value is the fact that it's no longer really recommended as a sub DPS slash supportive option, as the other pyro supports in Nicole and Durin have such good vertical that you would rather get theirs. TLDR for Mavuika, get her weapon first and then go into her Constellations. And then lastly for Lohen, just get his signature weapon. You should not be pulling for him or his Constellations on his debut banner. He's going to eventually be a free character. His weapon may never be seen again, and his Constellations aren't even that good. His weapon is a big damage increase, it should be the only thing you prioritize, please. You will get more Lohens passively. But with that, I think I have yapped enough, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment who you're pulling for in Luna 6. No, I'm wrong, it's Luna 7. Thank you to my channel members, I really appreciate your support. Hugs and kisses to you all. Thank you to everyone else for watching the video, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.